TV Crazy Man here. In this video we look at some interesting goofs from one of the greatest animated series of all time. Plus a quick look at the awesome monsters of the show and some fun facts on this unique series from the 1960s. Jonny Quest is known for its amazing art that looks like it was lifted right out of a superhero comic book. But Hanna-Barbera had a strict schedule, which meant a few goofs slipped by for the sake of getting the episodes done on time. In the first episode, The Mystery of the Lizard Men, it looks like they couldn't decide if this submarine bad guy has on gloves or not.
Maintain strict silence.
Here they colored in his hands as if he were wearing gloves, and yet they still drew in his fingernails. In the episode Arctic Splashdown, Jonny, Hadji, and Race are locked up in the back of this vehicle. After an explosion, we see the gang in the same vehicle with no doors. And then we see them again from the inside, and the doors are shut. Could be a creative license thing to show us what's happening inside during the explosion, but I'm not sure. What do y'all think? Was it a mistake, or was it intentional?
You know the answer to that, Johnny.
We need your valuable assistance, Dr. Quest.
Also in this episode, one of the outfits of one of the bad guys changes colors from one scene to the next. Probably just a consequence of being in a hurry and having an entire team working on the show at the same time. In the episode Double Danger, Race, Hadji, Jonny, and Bandit are riding in a Jeep. But as they round a curve, they are no longer drawn in their usually detailed manner, and Johnny's hair has even changed colors. I guess they were trying to take advantage of the smaller television sets they had back then, guessing that nobody would notice the characters no longer had, faces. Also, the Jeep's wheels disappear for a split second. It's amazing what you notice when you slow things down just a little bit. In the episode Shadow of the Condor, first Bandit is outside a basement window looking in on the evil Baron, but from the interior shot, Bandit can't be seen. And even when Jonny and Hadji begin looking in, they too are missing from the interior view of the outside. In the episode The Dreadful Doll, Race is held prisoner by Fred Flinstone. I'll explain that later. So Race is held in a room where the door opens to the inside of the room. Now there is a guard that the boys distract easily with rocks, but why does Race have to wait for Jonny to remove the board on the outside of a door that opens to the inside of his room? A board that is not visibly attached to the door in any way. See, the board's only attached to the door frame, not the door itself. Also in this episode, notice that the girl is sitting right next to both Jonny and Hadji. But when the camera view switches to a close-up, Hadji isn't there anymore. And then the camera switches back and he's back to where he was again. The animators were probably just trying to save a little time by cutting corners, just a little bit in this scene. Now this one I'm not completely 100% sure on account of the fact I've never been on a submarine before, or have shot off any torpedoes from a submarine, for that matter. But does it make sense that Race could shoot off the #1 torpedo twice, or were the animators just trying to save time drawing? On the episode Dragons of Ashita, Dr. Quest has Race Bannon's voice in one scene. At first in this scene, Dr. Quest sounds like his old self, voiced by Don Messick in this episode.
No idea why that native would be so afraid of you?
Then on his next line, his voice changes over to Race, voiced by Mike Rowe.
He spoke of dragons.
No idea why that native would be so afraid of you?
He spoke of dragons.
In the episode Werewolf of the Timberland, Dr. Quest's voice comes out of Race.
Look, I think he got away. Look, I think he got away.
In this episode, this dinosaur-looking bird is walking towards Dr. Quest and Race. And all of a sudden, he's instantly in mid-flight. In the episode Pirates from Below, when Hadji levitates Jonny, he also somehow changes Johnny's socks from white to blue. Believe it or not.
Hey, Hadji, that's enough! Let me down!
In the episode Attack of the Tree People, Dr. Quest and Race are playing chess. When the boat catches fire, Quest and Race are still in position staring intently at the chessboard and its pieces that have disappeared from the table. In the episode The Invisible Monster, there's one scene where Bandit's chasing after Dr. Quest and Johnny's mouth doesn't move when he calls after Bandit.
Bandit, come back here! Bandit, come back here!
On the episode, The Devil's Tower, a cable holding Dr. Quest's balloon breaks, and as the balloon flies up to a mountain, the cable is there, but when it reaches the top, the cable is gone, but then the cable is back a few seconds later. I wonder, also from this episode, that was fruit the monkey threw down on Bandit, wouldn't it? I hope. In this episode, Dr. Quest is doing that thing again, where he borrows Race's voice for a second.
I see him. I see him.
When Race and Quest catch up to a crook named Lieutenant Singh, his clothes are blackened from a car crash, but then he looks perfectly clean, and then he's back to being dirty again. Kinda makes me wonder if two different artists were involved here. In the episode Monster in the Monastery, Johnny can't make up his mind if he wants to wear his red winter coat or just his black shirt.
Shoot! Kill them! Kill them!
Excuse me!
I have one of them!
Now, lest you think all of Jonny Quest was filled with nothing but goofs, let's check out some of the awesome stuff from Jonny Quest.
Oh, man. I'm glad that's over.
Let's remember those amazing monsters from the show.
Yippee! Hooray!
Jonny Quest featured some cool monsters that are obviously influenced by classic monster and sci-fi movies. Unlike the original Scooby-Doo, the monsters more often than not turn out to be real. Or maybe it might be men in costumes at first, and then a real monster would be revealed at the end, just to keep you on your toes. When I was a kid, I remember particularly loving the episode that featured the robot spy created by Dr. Zen. The '82 Incredible Hulk animated series mirrored that episode, only theirs turned out to actually be from space. The series featured episodes with a mummy, a sea creature that reminds you of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and giant animals enlarged by a mad scientist. Besides monsters, you gotta love those jetpacks. Okay, now let's look at some fun trivia facts.
All right, you guys, let's move it.
Remember when I said Race was held prisoner by Fred Flinstone earlier in this video? Well, Henry Corden, the second voice of Fred Flinstone, did 15 episodes of miscellaneous voices for Jonny Quest.
You're pretty sharp.
He did miscellaneous voice work on the original Flintstones on 15 episodes. He inherited the voice of Fred Flintstone after the first Fred, Alan Reed, passed away in '77. He went on to do the voice of Fred for nearly 3 decades on various cartoon series, animated specials, and cereal commercials. He was performing as Flintstone until about 3 months before he died at the age of 85 in 2005. Mike Road, of course, was the voice of Race Bannon.
What a mess. That monster must have been here, too.
Mike Road also did the voices of other famous characters such as Reed Richards on the 1978 Fantastic Four cartoon, and another white-haired hero named John Butler on the Valley of the Dinosaurs. That was a favorite of mine. He also did a lot of voices on various other shows, including Speed Buggy and Captain Caveman. Tim Matheson has had a very long successful career. He's been on movies like the Brady Bunch sequel, The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again. He's even played Ronald Reagan once. He was approximately around 16 years old when Jonny Quest first aired.
I better go find my dog.
Now, believe it or not, he's 76 years of age.
Johnny, look, track.
Danny Bravo, who voiced Hadji, retired from acting many years ago. His last listing in IMDb was around 1969, and that was doing voice work on a couple episodes of Hanna-Barbera's The New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. And that's an interesting series. It mixes live action with animation and starred Ted Cassidy from the Addams Family as the villain every week.
I managed to activate the destruction mechanism before we left.
Dr. Quest was voiced by 2 different actors, John Stephenson and Don Messick. Stephenson only did a few episodes before Messick took over, but he did a ton of work for Hanna-Barbera before and after Jonny Quest, including doing the voice of Mr. Slate from the Flintstones.
Boulder Avenue? That's where I live.
Don Messick did a lot of cartoon voice work as well, of course.
Race, do you think you can take the truck into Cuba Bon and rent a plane?
He was most famously known as the original voice of Scooby-Doo. The reason why Jonny Quest feels like a comic book come to life is that it was created by comic book artist Doug Wildey, who worked at Marvel Comics when it was still known as Atlas Comics, And he also did some work for DC too. He did work on a lot of other cool projects like Herculoids, Return of the Planet of the Apes, Mr. T, the Godzilla Power Hour, and Chuck Norris' Karate Commandos. Well, I guess we're out of time this time around, but if you want more on Jonny Quest, let me know and I'll see what I can dig up later in the future for the TV Crazy Man channel. Please hit like, share the video, and subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Also, I'd like to take a quick moment to remind you of my animated channel featuring some of my own original characters. It's the Freddy Cat Cartoons channel. I think reviewing Jonny Quest has given me some ideas for later on down the line, but for now the channel is mostly, comedic in nature. I really appreciate you checking that out and maybe consider subscribing to that channel as well.
You may have a thought there.
Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.